Please be aware that this video contains themes that may be unsuitable for some viewers. While not graphically described, some of the discussions in this video include sexual abuse, exploitation, and grooming. If you or anyone you know is at risk or is a victim of any of these crimes, please contact the police urgently or contact Childline or the NSPCC for support and advice. A 14-year-old girl vanishes without a trace. A clear and obvious active grooming gang, and a predator in her own home. Who killed Charlene Downes, and why have the authorities failed to get justice for over 20 years? Welcome to Vanished Voices UK, your new favourite spot for curious missing persons cases, true crime stories, and in-depth investigations. Who killed Charlene Downes? The grim story of grooming gangs and a country covering it up. Blackpool, Lancashire. A seaside resort renowned for its bustling piers and neon-lit arcades. But on the night of the 1st of November 2003, the town's familiar hum was pierced by a new and chilling silence. 14-year-old Charlene Downes left home that evening to meet friends in the town centre. Wearing dark jeans and a black jumper, she was last seen near a cluster of takeaway and fast food outlets, then simply vanished. Within a few days, Lancashire Constabulary elevated her disappearance to a major incident, setting in motion one of the force's most protracted and controversial inquiries. Over the next 5 years, 2 men would stand trial, one accused of her murder, the other of disposing of her body, only for both proceedings to collapse amid evidential concerns. No conviction was ever secured, and no trace of Charlene has been found. Today, a £100,000 reward still awaits information leading to her killer's conviction or the recovery of her remains. Her fate remains shrouded in mystery, and her story a stark reminder of how a single night can change countless lives forever. In this investigation, we will look at who Charlene was, the investigations and charges brought by the authorities. We will look at the endemic exploitation and grooming of children in the UK, and the persistent and effective cover-ups of this behaviour across the UK and internationally. We will ask why sentencing for this predatory behaviour is so lenient, and look at the theories of Charlene's disappearance based on the facts that we have. This is the story of Charlene Downes, a young woman let down by the state. Charlene Elizabeth Caroline Downes was born on the 25th of March 1989 in Coventry in the West Midlands. Her parents are Karen and Robert Downes. Her mother and her father, who was a former soldier, raised 4 children. Charlene had a brother Robert Jr. and 2 sisters, Emma and Rebecca. Sadly, Robert Jr. passed away in 2021. In 1999, when Charlene was 10, the family moved north to Blackpool, Lancashire, settling into a terraced home on Buchanan Street. The move brought new surroundings, but also fresh challenges, as the family adapted to life in a busy seaside town. Charlene attended St George's School in Blackpool, where teachers described her as well and happy. A typical teenager, she loved pop music. Her mother later recalled her obsession with the boy band Westlife, and she enjoyed spending time with friends at the Central Promenade arcades. Shortly before her 14th birthday, Charlene was expelled from school. According to court testimony, this marked the start of a more unsettled period in her life, during which she spent increasing hours in the town centre's fast food quarters and back streets. At 14, she stood at around 155 centimetres, or 5 foot 1 inches tall, with straight shoulder-length brown hair and blue eyes, details that would be critical in the search for her. Her mother remembers a girl with a bright laugh and an infectious smile, whose sudden disappearance would leave a family and a community forever changed. On the evening of the 1st of November, Charlene Downes was wearing a distinctive outfit that became crucial to the search for her. Witnesses, including her mother, said that she was wearing slim-cut black denim jeans featuring a prominent gold eagle motif embroidered on the right thigh, an unusual design that officers later highlighted in publicity appeals. She was also wearing a black long-sleeved jumper adorned with a geometric white diamond pattern across the chest. On her feet, she had black ankle boots on with scuffed toes and a low block heel. She may have also been wearing a white hooded cardigan or top layered over her jumper. Some accounts and police reports noted that she may have added this for warmth. On Saturday the 1st of November 2003, 14-year-old Charlene Downes set out with her younger sister Rebecca for an afternoon stroll through Blackpool's town centre. At approximately 3:25 PM, CCTV captured the pair walking along Bank Hay Street, headed towards the brightly lit Coral Island amusement arcade. Incredibly, this CCTV footage wasn't released to the public until 13 years later. By approximately 6:15 PM, Charlene and Rebecca paused on Church Street where their mother Karen spotted them. They had a brief chat with their mum where Rebecca said she was going home and Charlene said she was meeting friends. Rebecca returned home alone while Charlene stepped into a nearby phone box believed to be on Leopold Road to call friends and began to drift beyond the arcades into quieter streets. Over the next few hours, Charlene spent time with a small group of acquaintances, moving first towards Cornt Street and then back to her family home on Buchanan Street. She set off again later that evening, this time to an alleyway on Abingdon Street, where she briefly conversed with a man in a local takeaway. At just after 9 PM, CCTV captures a girl believed to be Charlene at the junction of Dixon Road and Talbot Road. She is seen with an unidentified woman in her 30s wearing a long coat. But despite repeated appeals for this woman to come forward, she has never been identified. At around 9:30 PM, Charlene and her companion board the Carousel Bar tram on North Pier. This was allegedly caught on camera, but no footage or stills have been released. They disembarked sometime later and retraced their steps toward the town centre. The final confirmed sighting came at approximately 11 PM at the junction of Talbot Road and Abingdon Street, where Charlene parted company with her friend and then vanished without a trace. When Charlene did not return home by the 3rd of November, over a day later, her mother rang 999. A report in Lancs Live quotes extracts from a call where Karen was asked why she delayed reporting Charlene missing. Her response was that it is not uncommon for Charlene to stay at friends' houses. She also went missing once before, and on that occasion spent around 4 days in Wolverhampton. Shortly after the call, Lancashire Police launched a missing person inquiry, swiftly treating the case as urgent, and the search for answers began. Within days of Charlene Downes' disappearance, Lancashire Constabulary escalated their response. What began as a missing person inquiry rapidly became a major incident investigation, with the detectives stating they believed Charlene may have been killed within hours of her last sighting near the town centre's fast food outlets. Officers scoured the town, interviewing over 3,000 residents and staff across Blackpool's Golden Mile. Their findings painted a disturbing picture of localised grooming, dozens of underage girls exchanging sex for food, cigarettes, or affection at takeaway shops. Charlene was not the only victim. Police estimated that up to 60 girls had been targeted in this sordid network. The inquiry was elevated to a full homicide investigation in 2006, with 2 men arrested on suspicion of her murder. In May 2007, 2 men were charged and stood trial at Preston Crown Court. Ayad al-Batikai, the 29-year-old owner of the Funny Boys takeaway, faced an allegation that he had sexually assaulted and killed Charlene. His business partner Mohammed Rafishi was accused of helping to dispose of her body. Prosecutors presented evidence that al-Batakai had raped Charlene before the men allegedly joked about putting her body in kebabs. Charlene was last seen on Church Street in Blackpool, and it was initially believed that there was no CCTV evidence of her movements after 9:35 p.m. Later, during trial preparations, it emerged that some relevant CCTV footage may have been lost, damaged, or not retained, including from the fast food takeaway where she was last seen. The mishandling of CCTV evidence was part of broader concerns about police failings in the original investigation. Yet, despite graphic testimony and CCTV inquiries, the jury was unable to agree on a verdict, and the trial collapsed in August 2007. A retrial was swiftly scheduled for April 2008. In the days before the hearing of the retrial, the Crown Prosecution Service announced that it could offer no case. The key piece of evidence in the trial was based on covert surveillance of the accused, including over 50 hours of recordings. However, the trial judge ruled that the tapes were of such poor quality and the transcripts so inaccurate that they could not be relied upon. This was the central reason that the trial collapsed. The court concluded that Lancashire Constabulary's covert surveillance evidence was so critically flawed it could not support a prosecution. Thus, both men were released unconditionally. In a separate incident in June 2011, one of those released, Ayad al-Batakai, was convicted of assault after headbutting an 18-year-old woman, though this offence was obviously unrelated to Charlene's disappearance. An independent Police Complaints Commission report published in October 2009 sharply criticised the original inquiry. It found serious errors in the collection and handling of surveillance material, concluding those failures led directly to the collapse of both trials. A detective named Sergeant Jan Besant was initially found guilty of misconduct by Lancashire Constabulary, only to have that finding later overturned by the Police Arbitration Tribunal. In August 2017, a 51-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of murdering Charlene, but he was released 2 days later and is no longer under investigation. The reward of £100,000 remains on offer for information leading to the recovery of her body or the conviction of her killer. To this day, none of the men ever arrested in connection with Charlene's disappearance has been convicted of any offence relating to her presumed murder, and no physical trace of her has emerged. As discussed previously, Lancashire police uncovered a disturbing pattern beneath Blackpool's bright lights. Interviewing some 3,000 residents and workers, detectives found that Charlene and many other local girls had been swapping sex for food, cigarettes and affection, a practice now recognised as child sexual exploitation or localised grooming. There are multiple credible resources confirming that Charlene Downes made 13 visits to a sexual health walk-in clinic over a 12-month period in 2002 to 2003. According to a report by The Times, Charlene's visits to the clinic were noted in her medical records. One of these visits occurred when she presented with deep bruising on the inside of her thighs, indicating possible sexual assault. Despite these concerning signs, the clinic did not report the incidents to Child Protection Services, and no further action was taken at the time. An internal police report revealed that as many as 60 underage girls, some as young as 11, were targeted by male employees at the town centre's fast food and takeaway outlets. These girls, predominantly white and aged between 13 and 15, were groomed in and around 11 separate premises, where cigarettes, snacks and drinks were exchanged for sexual acts. Julie Bindle, in The Guardian, wrote, "This was endemic child sexual abuse, reflecting the scale of exploitation embedded in Blackpool's holiday town economy." Former Detective Superintendent Mick Gradwell later criticised the original inquiry, suggesting it had been hampered by political correctness, a reference to reluctance in confronting the fact that the perpetrators were predominantly from non-white communities, while their victims were white British girls. In this context of routine exploitation, Charlene's case was not an isolated horror, but part of a wider network of abuse, one that thrived in the shadows of pack-and-go tourism, where vulnerable teenagers could disappear without anyone noticing. Despite this issue being investigated and found to have been a real problem, the issue was not tackled properly, and rather than addressing it, it seems to have been swept under the rug and labelled as some kind of hateful conspiracy. The tragic case of Charlene Downes is sadly not isolated. Across the UK, grooming gangs have exploited vulnerable children with devastating consequences. One of the most notorious cases is the Rochdale grooming gang, where 10 men were convicted in 2012 for sexually abusing girls as young as 11. Sentences ranged from 4 to 19 years, with the ringleader receiving the longest term. This case exposed systemic failures in protecting victims and sparked nationwide calls for reform. Similarly, in Rotherham, over 1,400 children were exploited over a 16-year period. Perpetrators received sentences varying between 4 and 18 years, reflecting the serious nature of their crimes. The scandal revealed institutional shortcomings that allowed abuse to continue unchecked for years. In Oxford, 7 men were convicted in 2015 for abusing girls as young as 12, receiving sentences from 4 to 20 years. Sentencing for these horrific crimes follows guidelines established by the UK Sentencing Council. Judges consider factors such as the victim's age and vulnerability, the nature of the offences, and the offender's role. Despite this, many argue, including me, that these sentences are insufficient. The lifelong psychological trauma inflicted on victims will likely far exceed the time that their abusers spend behind bars. Survivors endure profound impacts on their mental health, relationships, and sense of safety, effects that are immeasurable and extremely damaging. Moreover, this leniency of sentences risks undermining public confidence in the justice system and may fail to serve as an adequate deterrent. The severity of these crimes demands not only robust sentencing, but also comprehensive support for survivors and proactive safeguarding measures to prevent exploitation before it happens. As we reflect on Charlene's case and others like it, it is clear that society must do better in protecting its most vulnerable. Recent government analysis estimates that around 17,000 children become victims of group-based exploitation each year, and some audits suggest that as many as 500,000 children suffer sexual abuse annually in the UK. In Rotherham, the J report of August 2014 found that between 1997 and 2013, at least 1,400 mostly white girls aged 11 to 16 were systematically groomed and abused by gangs of men. In Oxford, an inquiry culminating in 2013 led to the conviction of 7 men for the torture, rape and sexual abuse of hundreds of teenage girls, an alarming example of how professional failures allowed predators to operate unchecked. Charlene's disappearance fits into a wider picture of targeted grooming of vulnerable white British girls by organised groups, a pattern that recently seems to have been acknowledged by the UK government, despite their attempts to bury this narrative. In Telford, a July 2022 independent inquiry revealed that more than 1,000 children had been exploited over generations, with local authorities and police repeatedly failing to safeguard vulnerable victims. Detective Chief Inspector Philip Marshall, leading Operation Stovewood into the Rotherham scandal, uncovered over 1,142 recorded offences committed by 324 offenders against 1,150 victims, evidence that grooming networks continue to operate beyond the headlines. Experts warn that chronic under-resourcing of social services, institutional complacency, and reluctance to confront difficult truths have allowed this crisis to persist. Despite multiple inquiries and policy reforms, child sexual exploitation endures across the country, demanding sustained vigilance, robust safeguarding, and a commitment to confront systemic failings. While child sexual exploitation thrives in places like Blackpool, its reach extends far beyond, into the highest echelons of global power. At the centre of one of the most notorious networks stands Jeffrey Edward Epstein, born January 20th, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York, and by the 2000s a financier with connections to the rich, famous and politically influential. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested on federal sex trafficking and conspiracy charges, accused of recruiting girls as young as 14 in Florida and New York between 2002 and 2005. Prosecutors allege that he paid victims for sexual acts and enlisted some to recruit further underage girls. Epstein's private Caribbean island, ranch in New Mexico, and Manhattan mansion became the setting for abuse, and according to court filings, the sites where powerful guests were entertained. Unsealed John Doe court documents list as many as 153 individuals connected to his trafficking ring, sparking questions about who knew what and when. Among those allegedly named, though never charged, are politicians, businessmen, academics and celebrities, any of whom may have witnessed or facilitated Epstein's crimes. The full client list has never been officially released. In July 2025, the Department of Justice and FBI issued a memo denying the existence of such a list, triggering fresh accusations of a cover-up to shield the powerful. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's close associate, was convicted in December 2021 of procuring underage girls for his network. Yet many of Epstein's other associates remain free and their names buried in sealed filings. It has now been alleged that Maxwell may be ready to testify against the people that she helped traffic young women for. Will she survive to see that go ahead, I wonder? This confluence of wealth, influence and secrecy echoes in the gaps of the Charlene Downes inquiry, where local officials faced accusations of political correctness and evidence was mishandled. It raises a stark question. When exploitation involves the elite, do investigations stall, or worse, will they ever start in earnest? As we confront Charlene's unanswered fate, we must also confront the structures that allow predators, local or global, to thrive in the shadows of power. Only by demanding transparency at every level can justice reach the victims long denied it. Despite 2 failed trials and thousands of hours of investigation, Charlene Downes' fate remains unresolved. Over the years, investigators and armchair detectives alike have advanced a handful of leading theories, each grounded in the fragmentary evidence that survives. Prosecutors at Preston Crown Court alleged that Charlene was strangled in or near the Funny Boys takeaway, then dismembered, and her remains joked about as being used in kebabs sold on Blackpool's Golden Mile. As mentioned previously, no forensic evidence ever linked Charlene's body to the shop, only hearsay from co-accused defendants, and no human tissue was recovered. An internal police report concluded that up to 60 local girls were groomed by employees in 11 separate fast food outlets, suggesting Charlene was one of many victims in a broader child exploitation network. This theory posits that multiple perpetrators, perhaps operating in concert, were involved in her disappearance, and that focusing on just 2 men may have obscured the wider ring. Following the collapse of 2 trials, the Independent Police Complaints Commission slammed Lancashire Constabulary for serious errors in handling covert surveillance evidence. Critics argued that these failings were not merely incompetence, but part of a reluctance to confront politically sensitive truths, namely that the accused were non-white and Charlene was white. Some believe senior officers quietly suppressed leads to avoid community tensions. In recent years, private investigators working for the Downes family have suggested other possible suspects, including convicted paedophile Raymond Monroe, a family friend arrested and released in 2003 but never charged. Supporters of this theory point to Monroe's access to Charlene's social circle and his criminal history. Raymond Monroe from Fleetwood was convicted in 2003 at Preston Court and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. The conviction stemmed from several deeply disturbing offences involving very young children. 3 counts of indecent assault, including attacks on a 9-year-old girl during babysitting, a 6-year-old boy, and another young girl, as well as 1 count of exposure. Reports stated that a Fleetwood man who preyed on innocent young children has been jailed for 4.5 years, pleaded guilty against 3 girls and indecently assaulting a 6-year-old boy. It is believed that he was a lodger in the Downes household at the time she went missing and was quite close to Charlene's dad. No hard evidence has emerged publicly to suggest he was involved, but this doesn't mean he wasn't, and the simple fact that he was a disgusting predator with easy access to Charlene means that he could well be involved or responsible. While many theories have circulated about what happened to Charlene Downes, the truth remains tragically elusive. From alleged grooming networks to possible failures in early police investigations, each theory reflects public frustration and a desperate need for answers. But without conclusive evidence, much of what is speculated cannot be proven. What remains undeniable is this: the vulnerable 14-year-old girl vanished, and over 2 decades later, those responsible have never been held to account. Until justice is served, the theories will persist, but they should never distract from the fundamental goal: finding out what really happened to Charlene. Next, we'll look at some key unanswered questions in the Charlene Downes case. Where is Charlene's body? Despite 2 trials and over 3,000 interviews, no trace of Charlene's remains has ever been recovered. No grave, no ashes, no human tissue. Why were only 2 men ever charged when up to 60 local girls were known to have been groomed? Lancashire police uncovered a network of exploitation across 11 fast food premises, yet beyond Ayad al-Bataki and Mohammed Ravishi, no other employees were prosecuted. Why was no forensic evidence secured? Even where CCTV, audio tapes, and covert surveillance suggested wrongdoing, no biological or physical evidence such as DNA fibres or blood was ever processed to link Charlene to a crime scene. How did gaps in CCTV coverage and delays in obtaining footage hamper the inquiry? Detectives later admitted that the limited camera angles in the area and delays in callers coming forward meant crucial hours of Charlene's movements were unrecorded. What new information prompted the 2017 arrest, and why did it lead nowhere? On the 1st of August 2017, a 51-year-old man was held on suspicion of Charlene's murder, then released 2 days later. No explanation has been published for the intelligence that triggered his arrest, or for its swift withdrawal. Who else knows what happened, and what's stopping them from speaking? Senior officers believe individuals present that night, whether as peers or bystanders, know things and they've never come forward. Why so many potential witnesses remain silent is still unexplained. How much influence does class, race, and bias play in missing person cases? Some journalists and campaigners argue that Charlene's case, and those of similar working class girls, did not receive the same national attention or urgency as others. This criticism intersects with conversations about class, bias, race, and how victims are perceived. Looking at the case of Maddie McCann, for example, in comparison, her family was upper middle class, whereas Charlene's was working class. This is just one contrast, but how much do these differences influence attention and public support? Has anything changed since Charlene went missing? Since Charlene's disappearance, UK police have updated their missing children response protocols. However, as of recent reports, many forces still fail to follow best practices, particularly in cases involving repeated runaways. We know that many children run away from care and/or because of abuse, sexual or otherwise, so are we doing enough to protect the most vulnerable people in society? Until these questions are resolved, Charlene's disappearance will remain an open wound for her family and a cautionary tale about how the most vulnerable can slip through the cracks, both in plain sight and in the shadows. Today, more than 2 decades on, a £100,000 reward still stands on offer for information leading to the conviction of Charlene Downes' killer or the recovery of her remains. If you have any knowledge, no matter how small it may be, please contact Lancashire Police on 101 or Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111 or even via crimestoppers.uk.org. For anyone affected by Charlene's disappearance or any missing person, support is available through the UK charity Missing People. You can download their free posters, share sightings on social media, or call their 24-hour helpline on 116000 for confidential guidance. We must do better for women and young girls everywhere, ensuring every vulnerable child is heard, protected and never forgotten. It is our collective responsibility to turn heartbreak into hope, silence into action. We must not allow conversations to be shut down just because they're difficult. Join the search, share this story, speak up for Charlene and for the countless other children still waiting for justice.
So today marks 20 years since Charlene Downes disappeared on the 1st of November 2003 in Blackpool. She's a 14-year-old vulnerable teenager. And today I would like to appeal to those people who know what happened to Charlene, know who is responsible for her disappearance. It might be that you're one of those people who knows what happens to Charlene, but for whatever reason over the last 20 years have not come forward and have not provided that information. I want to tell you today, it is not too late. It is not too late to tell us what you know and what happened to Charlene. It may be that at the time or over the last 20 years you've not felt in a position to talk. Your circumstances may have changed. Your allegiances may have changed. I'm telling you that it is not too late today to come forward and tell us, so that we can get justice for Charlene, get justice for her family, and give them the closure that they so richly deserve.
Charlene Elizabeth Caroline Downes was just 14 years old when she was likely murdered by one or more predators, and not a single fragment of Charlene's remains has been found. For Charlene's family, and for every community scarred by child sexual exploitation, this unresolved case is more than just a statistic. It is a call to confront our collective failures to protect the most vulnerable. As we finish this video, let Charlene's story remind us that real justice demands constant vigilance, transparent policing, and unwavering support for our young people. Only then can we hope to prevent another child from disappearing into silence. As always, thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, every missing person deserves to be found. Like, comment and subscribe to see more new and cold missing persons cases from the UK.